Thank you for a little bit of guests who we have. So Valentina, and for those who are looking at us in Teams, and thanks for the students. Today we have with us two jury members, Léonore, Nemec, and Kiril Ass, and I would like to present them very shortly. So Kiril is an architect and also a scenographer who's particularly in the recent times dealing with architecture of exhibition and art spaces. He will, of course, present his architecture later, but I would like to say that for me, Kiril was also a professor when I was a student. So for me, it's very happy to see him again continuing sharing the knowledge to the younger generation of students. And the rest he will present himself.
Thank you.
Sorry. Which one?
Okay, in a few words. Yeah, it's a very short presentation because I don't want to really go into what I'm doing because it's a lot of stuff and it's not very also, how to say, relevant for now. I graduated in '98 and after worked in some foreign companies in Moscow. I was born and studied in Russia. And then I joined the team of Alexander Brodsky, renowned Russian first paper and then strange architect, and worked for him for 15 years. And then with my wife, we started a small known-name practice of designing exhibitions. It happened by chance 9 years ago. And we designed one exhibition, then it was liked, then somebody else commissioned another one, and somehow we became full-time exhibition architects, thanks to the enormous influx of money in Russian cultural scene. We could afford living out from this. And in parallel, I taught first in Moscow Architectural Institute, the governmental architectural school where Leonid was learning at one point, and he graduated. I was assisting my father who was teaching him, and Leonid graduated under us back in 2010. And then a new private architectural school was started in Moscow called Moscow Architectural School. And then we already started doing real teaching architecture, like the proper way, not the way as it was dictated by the governmental instructions. So it was a pleasant period of time. And when the war started, we couldn't stay anymore for ethical and paranoid reasons. So we just packed up in a week and left the country. Because hopefully I was half Russian, half Bulgarian, and I could move to Bulgaria without any big problems. And I became a Bulgarian architect now. So now I'm Bulgarian who lived for 48 years in Russia. And then for some reason moved back to his home country. And my small presentation will be, when Leonid asked me to present something to you, I thought that maybe I should present something that could be somehow useful for your practice, for your practice and for your architectural well-being, so to say. And we were discussing it with my wife, so that's why our both names are written on the wall. And we thought that one of the most important parts of of the architect's lifestyle is close reading of everything you see and close looking at things you see around. You can really learn from anything you encounter in your daily life. And if it's something, there are some places that are very beautiful and and very impressively complicated, and one of those will be presented now. But actually you can learn from anything and just grasp smaller bits from different spaces and different combinations of materials and things and try to read them closely and try to reuse them in your work. Because actually, I believe that architects in their practice, they're always utilizing and reusing the existing things, because actually we don't have any other means of inventing. Because we invent the things that we've seen somehow, or maximum we can invent something which is opposing the things that we've seen, but not the things that you couldn't imagine an architect inventing something that is absolutely unseen, because it's always something that exists somewhere and it's either promoted or opposed. And as a how it's called, as an example of this, I'll go into one very beautiful location in Venice, one of the architect's favorite city. It's the Church of San Francesco della Vigne, which is translated San Francesco in the vineyard, which is actually still on a vineyard, but it's not visible. It's a small monastery in Venice, found in like 12th century or something like this, but then underwent many changes, and one of the most important changes was Palladio designing its facade of the main church, which was one of the second selection of Palladio's works, and of the Venetian Palladian facades, where he designed actually this weird attempts to combine the basilical plan with classical colonnade and classical portico. And the point of this presentation is how from one complex you can grasp so many ideas and utilize them in your work, that then maybe you don't need any other building to learn from. So that's the facade of San Francesco della Vigne, the main church. On the left, we see the wall of the cloister. That's just a small campo in Venice. On the right, there is a building which is built more or less, I think, earlier than this facade. And what we see here is this amazing idea of the facade, which is designed as if there is nothing. You see this super symmetrical. It looks is connected to the church, which was designed by a different architect in a different time, but there is a building in front of it. But Palladio don't really take it into account, and that's very important. That actually for him this facade is more important than the surroundings. It's the ideology of this facade is the important part. This represents itself not even to the viewer, because the viewer never could see it altogether. It represents itself to the deity probably, or just to the world itself, or to Palladio probably the building and the viewer are more or less the same level of feeling. And the illustration, and it's one of my favorite actually locations, and this attitude we in a way utilized in our work in the museum, in the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, for a huge exhibition of collection of several brothers, collectors of the beginning of the 20th century, brothers Shukins. One of them, who was most famous of them, commissioned Matisse for the dance, for example. And we'll see it in other after, but that was a room of two other of the brothers. One of them was collecting German art of the 16th, 18th century, and the other was collecting everything he could get his hands on. And the museum itself is a extremely classicist building filled up with copies of antique art, which was also present in the exhibition. So as you see, it's a combination of existing classical building, another pseudo-classical detailed facade with these two saints standing up on the right, and then there is this the ball of the Farnese ball in the bottom in the back how it's called in the backdrop, and in front of it there is a small picture of some French impressionist. So everything is imposed upon each other, more or less the same way as Palladio imposed his building upon the buildings that existed in Venice at the time when he was building his facade. There were like a dozen of this kind of examples that will be presented, and they will all be around San Francesco. Another one in the cloister of San Francesco, there are these tombstones lying on the floor, and these are tombstones of the friars of the Franciscan order that were living there and died and were interred in these passageways, reminding the other friars of the mortality and vanitas of the world and so on. And that's very important to me because it's actually, I actually really despise the manner of the contemporary world trying to hide the dead, because the dead is a very important part of the living, and this way of representing the deceased in the daily life, to my taste, is very important. And we utilized this concept of inscribed stones, which actually dates back to the antiquity, when many of the, especially the late antiquity, when many of the Christian dead was buried under flat stones with some inscriptions. In an exhibition which was devoted to the diaries of girls and women of Jewish origin under the German purges of the 30s, especially of Anne Frank, of course, but she was not the only one who left diaries of the period. And as long the exhibition had nothing to do with, we had no pictures, almost, just portraits of the girls. We had no originals, because nobody would give you original diary, and they were written all in different languages nobody could read anyway in Russia, so like Dutch or Czech or French or anything. So we had to use translations, but the translations, they lack originality of the real thing. So we tried to make these translations into kind of thumbstones, which were inscriptions on the walls, so that it was cut out MDFs fixed on the walls, painted in the color of the wall, somehow hanging over your head. And that was the way to directly represent this more or less these mortal and deadly atrocities that were actually imposed over these poor women, absolutely innocent. And most of them were, of course, killed, but some lived through to testify of this repression. And another part of this thing that would give this, here we see some light falling down from the arcade on the left, and here we installed a beamer which was leaving some kind of light from a window which was moving around the walls all the time in like very long periods. Very slowly you see it on the wall, this yellowish light which is falling from an existent window. The next one is this facade, which is actually, it is a compilation of different periods of building this church, as you see, because there are like obviously even some Roman windows on the bottom, then some circular windows of the Renaissance on the top, and it's all mixed up somehow, and it's in a way it was never thought to be represented in any way. It was just a wall with openings. So we were I'm always very impressed by this facade, because it's actually it's как слово было, вот это случайный, не рандом, нет, это народно, vernacular, yeah, actually it's a vernacular facade attached to this super Apollonic facade of Palladio, and it's just around the corner, and it's just the same building. I really like this opposition. And so we were designing once an exhibition devoted to the Jewish artists in the Russian avant-garde, but thinking of the Jewish, we immediately ended up with the ghetto motif, and this is important. And for the ghetto, it's important to have a small campo for the original ghetto, especially which was in Rome. One was in Rome and the other was in Venice, and in Venice was the first ghetto, and it had to be also somehow both vernacular and classical, and that's why we have this absolutely useless oval window over one of the rooms, and then there is this square window on the top. So it's in a way it's borrowing also the same attitude of vernacularity, using very strong classical gestures in its realization. So that's another piece of our work. If we go through this pathway that we've seen in the previous pictures in the cloister, you end up in a very small room, which is actually housing this one. And you drop a coin, and it leads up, and you see this beautiful piece by Giovanni Bellini, Madonna with the saints and the donator, and it's absolutely magic, of course, and it's worth getting there just to see this small painting in this small dark room. And this very fact that you have to put a coin to light up things in the dark made us think about this one. And that was another exhibition of Russian avant-garde, which was showing works that were never shown together because they were all sent to different museums of Soviet Russia in the 20s in order to make workers to teach workers of contemporary art, which never happened because very soon after the very notion of contemporary art in the Soviet Union was forbidden, and everything turned into a very neoclassical kind of hardcore realism. But before that, all these paintings went away, and they were hid in different local museums all around the country. And thanks to one of Russian art historian, they were collected back for an exhibition. But as long as it happened after the civil war of the 20s in Russia, and everything was destroyed. The country was burned to ashes generally. We made a super black box with these pictures hanging on the walls, with every picture having its own lampade, like it happens in churches. We had extremely bad critical response for that. Another piece of San Francesco is when you go out from the church, you see this window looking obviously west because the altar is on the east, and in order to block the sunlight in the afternoon, there is this old curtain hanging on the wall, always having this miraculous light behind it. And we used somehow similar treat when we were doing the same exhibition of Shukin's collections in Pushkin Museum, when we had to represent works of Derain in a space which was actually used in the museum for copies of Michelangelo pieces. So you couldn't just block out Michelangelo with walls. So we just cut out windows in the walls and put some thin curtain in the windows and lit up a little bit Michelangelo's pieces in the back. So they were always present. They were always present in the space behind the Rens and also the works. Another piece is this on the other side of the same campo we've seen earlier. There is this fantastic colonnade which is going along the small canal crossed by the bridge of San Francesco, actually, this Colle di San Francesco. And that's one of the most fantastic Baroque colonnades I've seen in my life. Way better than Bernini's Rome or whatever. And the painting on of these columns is just taking my breath, and the light which is falling through this is absolutely amazing. So this image translated somehow into this colonnade, these walls that we built for an exhibition of one movement of Russian avant-garde of the beginning of the century to something of 1905, 1915. And here just the rhythm is repeated, but it's important that this rhythm is also something you can get and reuse, not in direct, but in some indirect way, but still get this rhythmical structure for your work. And here is this very same yard, this vernacular facade on the left and the colonnade on the right. And this beautiful white facade on the bottom with the red color. It's just amazing place. And you see these trees that are growing in some very weird pattern. Absolutely inconceivably. I cannot understand why they're growing like that, why they were planted like that, and why they're there. But I adore the way they're set out. And when we were designing an exhibition of type machines in Moscow, we had somehow reused these verticalities in a huge space with some light falling in between, placing these typewriters on a high stools with a big glass on top in order to recreate this feeling of somehow irregular regularity, which we've seen on the previous picture. I know that it's totally different, but still there are some traces of this attitude that are important. That are important. And that's just the last picture, just to grasp the size. And that's something I'm always trying to think about when we're designing anything. And that's very important actually to design, to think about when you're designing too, is the scale. This scale of the facade we've seen in the beginning is like that. You see, these people are going around the corner. It's not Photoshop. Its first profile is higher than one's head. And that's very important to know what are you designing and who is your addressee, because when you address layman, that's one scale. When you address a deity, it's a different scale. And but then when you're addressing the layman from the distance, is third scale. So all this scaling is extremely important to keep in one's head, and this is actually what is our business all about. It's about detailing and scale. Thank you. Any questions?
Are there any questions? That usually very lots of questions. Let's pass the microphone, or the absence of microphone, to Léonore. Léonore is a colleague and a friend who is a teacher in the École Polytechnique Fédérale Lausanne, also an architect who works in in diversity of skills from territorial big projects to quite some small commissions, and we have met while we were working together in Herzegovina.
So I will try to speak loud enough. Thank you to invite me today. I'm really happy to be with you. I will show you a few projects. So as Leonid told you, I was working for Herzegovina for a few years. And 3 years ago, I quit. And since then, I start my own practice. So I'm working by myself. And I'm as well a member of a collective, which name is Architecture Land Initiative. So today, I will try. I don't have the time, but I will try to keep it on time. But I will show you 4 projects, and I will start. I will start to explain a bit why I choose this title, Active Uncertainty. So maybe to precise, I was working mainly in Switzerland, so everything I'm going to show you is in the context of Switzerland. Why I choose active uncertainty, I would say that this last 3 years, I was working with a lot of doubts as well, and trying to find how I want to practice architecture. And what is architecture nowadays as well is not the same as for 10 years or 50 years. Mainly because of the climate change as well, we are facing a lot of uncertainty, and we have to face a new way of doing. We have to rethink, to unlearn and relearn. And all of that is providing a lot of doubts, and it's not that there are precise solutions. So, but I think that this uncertainty is as well an opportunity, and it can give you as well freedom to test and to experiment. And that's why the idea is being active in this uncertainty, and to really try to sensibilize as well your client. There are huge psychological work as well in the architect work. So that's a part as well, and then also this idea. So maybe I'm continuing in this way of this connecting skills. So I will show you basically so 4 projects. 3 of them, they are more an architecture scale. So it's a transformation of 2 barns into apartments. Another one is as well a renovation of 1 family house, and the last project, it's more a territorial study. And the idea that is really to show you that everything is connected, and when you work in details, it's gonna impact as well a bigger scale. And if you work in a bigger scale, you will have as well to deal with a detailed scale. And for example, if you open your sink at home, the water coming out is not only the water coming out from in your apartment, but it's linked to the metabolism of the city, to governance of territories. So the 2 first projects, it's also you will see it's only transformation. So I will explain the project through the history of the building. So it was a first building aimed to be something else as it is today. And as well, it's also about densification, which has to do as well with nowadays that we are more and more, and how to react to this densification, not only in city center, but as well in rural areas. So the 2 first house, one is in Ruaron, and the second one is in Epoter. Both of our farms, where you have, and you always had a part which was housing, but the main part of this farm was for hay and animals. So this is, here you can see in this house, this is the inhabiting area, and this was for the hay and animals. And here it's another organization. So on the upper level was for the hay mainly, no animals here, and this area was for the farmers. So basically, in this project, the owner wanted to transform that part in the upper level to welcome a new family. So the idea is that this house, which only one family house now, will be transformed in 2 family houses. When I'm saying family, I mean, we will say as well, we are also addressing what we discussed as well this morning, that is not only always those nuclear family, but you will see also it has to do with the typology of the apartment. So we are in the countryside in Switzerland. You can see here the house surrounded by a garden, but nothing to do anymore with the fields around. And this national street, the other project you will see as well, it's always connected in a network. So the first project, so the initial house has to do with this juxtaposition of rooms. So it's really like a kind of complex juxtaposition of rooms in a plan, but in a section as well. And the project is trying to work with that and to enhance this composition. And has also to do with transparency. So you can see here, this house was built at the end, at the beginning of the 19th century, but it was transformed in the 1990. An architect was living there, and he decided to put his office in this barn over here. And he did it in a way a bit strange. So he constructed it with concrete, and he didn't really respect the original wood construction. And the idea here, it was to find again this transparency here and see, because of economical matter, how we could maybe still keep some of this concrete structure. So basically, you can see here the same section. So the idea was really to bring again this connection here. But we try to keep at some, when it would be possible to not lose the quality of the space, to keep this existing concrete structure. So you can see it here on this image as well. This kind of super strange cube really put into this barn. As well, what was quite often happening in this typology of housing is that you have a main corpus, and next to that it was extent. Here as well, we worked in this area. You can see, so I was telling you that today this is one family living here, and the idea is to then bring another family living here. And for intimacy reason, we decided to change the access, and because of that, we had as well to elevated this roof, which as well was providing more quality of the space. The idea here is to keep the structural elements, so we don't throw it away, but we reuse them. So here you can see a bit the balance in between yellow and red. So we get rid of non-structural elements, but we tried all the floor are keeping and the ceiling as well. So we use the ceiling to have a small mezzanine on the top. Here you can see that the bathroom, or the enclosed space, they are organized more in the middle of the room, while on one side and the other side you find the different spaces. So you enter here, you have the entrance and the kitchen, one room here. The owner didn't want to have a too dense apartment. They didn't want to have a big family there. So it's kind of a luxurious apartment in terms of surfaces. Okay, I won't explain you all, I think you see it. So the idea was really to use the existing levels as well to, on one hand, connect the different spaces, but still, because of the small stairs, disconnect as well the different uses. Last word about this project is the question of heritage as well. So you will see, so basically the densification in the existing volume. So in no of the project I will show you today, we use more print, soil print or ground print. It's everything content in the existing volume. Which is as well interesting for the heritage and landmark. Maybe on this, the facade we see here, and that you have this cantilever of the roof, and behind that, so you see it here, well, we are quite far, but actually it's behind the roof, those big windows to provide the light. Is the question how to provide light in this kind of depth. So you have here the view connecting to the outside, but somehow hidden by the cantilever of the roof. And here in this massive roof, you have small windows like that, but when you're inside, it's providing you really like zenithal light, which is providing a good quality of the space. Okay, the second project is this one. You can see that was really a farm. You can see here this ramp for the hay. We are here again, surrounded by a garden, but the fields is not belonging to the owners. Here you can see the existing plan. Today, the first that was only this part, which was for human beings, and all this part was for hay and animals. Today they use this, but it's still like a 40% of the building. All this area is used for storage, and this one was aimed to be transformed for housing as well. So this project is organized mainly around this big wall. So we tried as well to keep the layers of materiality. So you have here the existing mineral walls, and then on the upper level wood, which is original construction. You can see here that the part is still used for storage. And you see the state of the existing structure. So the project is taking advantage of this different level and organize the section or the project like a Raumplan to benefit from the existing, and as well using the slope of the roof to organize the rooms. It's also providing new opening to the landscape. You have a great view on the Jura, so it's to provide as well a new connection to the context. You can see here as well in this image, it was an old oven, and I did really to keep it and to change it. You will see in the ground floor is toilets, bathrooms, and on the upper floor it's used as a terrace. So you see here that we are really turning all the time around this existing structure, and that the space are organized all around. There are no corridor in this typology, and this can be used for family as for roommates. The rooms, they are almost always the same size somehow, and opened. If I go through, so you go here, it's pretty small. So the idea was really to try to connect visually, but to separate the space as well with this different level. And then you come up, you all the time you have opening to different orientation, and then you finish on the last floor, which is now furnished like for family. It was the wish of the owner somehow, but actually it can really be used also for roommates or different configuration. And again, it's always the question how to integrate that in the context, in the heritage of this more rural area. What we try to do with the materiality, and as well we use as much as possible like the existing opening stayed at their own place, and we add here 2 opening, and here it's one to create those rooms. Okay, so the last housing project, it's located in the city center of Geneva. So it's this house. It's a quite special situation. It was before. It was built in the late 1800, and it was for a clock company. And now it's located in between this protected area of Le Vieux Carouge, but it's on the line. It's as well partly on an industrial area meant to be developed those next, densified those next years. So you can see here the house. You can see the strange typology with these 2 stairs. Until 2019, it was a family was living there, so it was a one family house, and they tried to sell it, but it was not possible for anyone to afford it, so they decided to cut it in 2. So one family house become a 2 family house. So it's a way of densification somehow as well. But the problem is that you have, so the client I work with, they had the left part. We'll go further. And so it was the question how we can provide more surfaces within the volume. So the first project was to extend with a small reversible intervention to double not double, but to extend the ground floor. And the attic was not, there were no openings, so it was to transform the attic into rooms. I quickly go through here. So that was the project. You can see here the openings and this this extension, which was done for both neighbors. And because it's not in the protected area, because it's touching it, we were still like under those rules somehow. And finally, the Patrimoine accepted to build this opening on the attic, but we didn't get the permission to extend that, even if it's quite light. But so we built those opening that you can see here, which were trying to deal with the existing, but in a more maybe contemporary way, and provide then really like real room opening to the landscape, to the Salève, which double somehow the inhabiting surfaces. And the question now, it's a bit, so nowadays you don't have the extension here. It's a family of young family with 3 children. So we had now, they went into, they are living there since for a few months now. And the next year, it's a question of how to, in this volume, how to recreate a space to be inhabited. So we are still working on. Now I'm gonna do a big jump into scales. So I will show you one of the projects we did with this collective architecture land initiative. We are based mainly in Geneva and Zurich. And I'm leading mostly the project in Geneva. And I will show you finally just one project because it's going to be a bit too long otherwise. But I will show you a project which name is Jardin des Nations. So it's a vision for the area. I don't know if you know it. It's not so far from here. It's all the area with the embassy, UNO, all this international world in Geneva. I show you this picture because today we inherit those plans to organize our cities and territories. And actually, so this is the plans for the 2 projects. I will show you only this one. But basically, the canton of Geneva with the different communes which are on the territory here decided to start a study to find a new vision for this area, because the last plan directeur de quartier was in 2005. And the problem is when it went out, it took about 10 years to come to this drawing. And when it came out, it was already obsolete. So it's really a research on how we should change our space today. And how we can be active and not wait too long in order to change it as well in the urgency of the climate change. So this vision took 24 months, and we organized it through phases. It was a contributive approach. So we organized it with different forum and workshop with more than 200 participants. And quickly, maybe I will show you just about this area. So it's a clash of history, a clash of architecture as well. You can see that it was at the beginning more an agricultural area with some big domain with big houses. And during the years in the 20th century, it developed a lot through those international organizations mainly. Here in the area, you have also this clash of this emblematic 20th century's architecture building and still this wild nature, sometimes abundant as well. You have this question of scale. So you have really people from all around the world going there and thinking about how we should live today somehow. And this connection as well in between this globalization and this local situation, how every action is impacted as well here locally. And of course, it's a question of security, which was also a main topic, and how we can provide quality and of the public space. And we have to address as well the territory in terms of inhabitants with human beings and non-human beings. I won't go too deep. It was a 2 years project, so I won't explain you everything because we're not going to finish otherwise. But I will maybe talk a bit more about the process. So it was a contributory approach. As I said, we organized different forums, workshop. We met a lot of people. We have many interventions, and we walked a lot in the territory. And this is a really an important point because we went a lot there, and every time you are discovering new issue and new and sometimes some solution as well. We did this workshop. We really prepared every time we had a topic. We did some plans, drawings for that, and then we were discussing with at least more than 200 people at the end. From that came out for a strategy which has to do with mobility, environment, architecture, and security. I will go quickly through the drawings, but I won't explain you everything. It's just that maybe what is important, what we tried through this project is to find new tools to draw and to communicate as well. So you can see that on this map, if I zoom, it was always this question of being able to draw the thing how they are and be able to zoom in and zoom out and understand this complexity through this drawing as well. So that was the strategy of, I would say, more biology, ecology, environment. Sorry, I went, okay, this way. Then we work on the mobility. Here you can see that we were talking as well to connect the link and right side banks of the lake. I won't go too deep, otherwise we won't have time. The third one is about security. And when we were talking about security, it was not only a fence, but it's also to try to understand limits in the time, which means that at some moment during the year, maybe the UN park could open or some part of them be open to the public and sometimes close, and try to provide this public continuity through also different span of time. And the last one, it was about heritage and how to care about the heritage and landmarks that we have. And here, so you see in blue, it's all the ground floor that we thought important for the public life. Doesn't mean that is everything accessible, but it's like the potentiality that could have happened at some moment and the continuity that is needed at some point. And here maybe you can see it, so the quality now is not so good, but we really tried to draw everything like the ground floor connected inside or outside, that's the same. Okay. The idea I was telling you before that with this, the problem with the PDQ is that it takes a lot of time to come to a solution, and then it's already too late somehow. So we really tried to propose an approach that could work as well in a short and a long term. So this summer we already had to organize some project that we called so-called proto project. And you have to understand that they are small projects, but they are like linked to bigger project that will take maybe more time to be developed. You will understand better. As well, I was talking about psychology at the beginning, is that we have to change many way of doing and thinking, and the communication and sensibilization for this is really a main topic and really crucial. And so the way you communicate is also super important. And here you see that we did an exhibition in the Museum of Ariana, where we were explaining the project in the territory itself. So this proto project we did this summer, it's linked to bigger project, but they are done as well to start tomorrow to activate the territory. I will show you two of them, which is here along the lake. So I would say that the project is aiming to change the status of the existing road, which is today really like a highway, and really disconnecting the lake from the territory. So the idea is to change this road into an urban boulevard and to provide more access to the lake to the inhabitants as well, which is a point and will be more and more those next years. Again, it's an idea to work in time. So that's why you see this. It's like maybe to work in one place first and then try to work in another place, and it's like step by step try to change few things while in parallel working with the politics for a more infrastructural project. Okay, so what we organize a few go and forth on the lake to actually try to show that we could also solve the problem of mobility in Geneva with the lake, and we don't need maybe to build a new bridge, but maybe by changing our way of moving on the territory, and the idea is like really like taking a boat is not the same as being in the traffic for 1 hour, so that really think about the experience you're doing. When I will go a bit quicker. Also here you see that it's absolutely not done to work here, while here behind is a botanical garden. So actually you could have a direct connection and be in a space which is actually really nice. So we made open this this door for the occasion. So you have some tools which are there, but they need to be activated. The last part of the project is taking part around the Place des Nations. And the idea here is that to keep, so we understood that the the Place des Nations is a need for demonstration, but actually there are not a big quality for public space and meeting points. So the idea was to say that the Place des Nations is not only this, but it's actually this whole places here with the park Rigaud and Les Feuillantines, which is also part of UN, and maybe in a few years they will open it, let's see. But for this summer we were in discussion with them, and finally it was not possible to open it, but we work on this area here, which is an abandoned area. You can see, I mean, people are being there and abandoning furnitures, and actually it was again a question of care to reactivate this space. And I'm talking about here, but I'm talking also about the building. So we organized, thanks to that, we could work on the ground and really care the ground. And as well, the building, they repainted for that. I mean, just to show that small action could provide as well bigger effect. Okay, and the last one is the Gradin Rigaud, so it's in this park. You can see it here. We built a small wood structure. The idea of the city today, or the canton at least, is to use this park as a prototype to test ongoing park. So to test what does it mean if a park is not be done for 100 years, but if it's changing every 10 years, for instance, and how we can inhabit those public spaces. So they start with here potager, and then we provide this structure, wooden structure, that is like in the park, playing with the slope of the ground as well, and trying to be kind of subtle and not too heavy, but providing space for meeting, for an official discussion, for happening. I mean, it was really a lack of place in this area of an unofficial, unofficial places where they could hand international discussion, congress, and so that is not, of course, the only answer, but that could be a starting point. And you can see that here as well, we work with an orchard. So there were as well a participative orchard around. You can see it. We did it, was 2 weeks ago. And is meant to be there, this structure, for 4 years now. And the orchard for way much more, actually. And I'm done. I hope it was good.
Thank you very much. We go back to the ship. And if there are any questions, of course, Léonore, feel free to ask.
Good.